Hello and welcome back to Autistic After Hours. I'm your host Ashra, and today we're going to be talking about why I don't think I can ever live alone as an autistic person. This is something that I briefly mentioned on Instagram, and a lot of people were curious to hear more, so that is why I am doing an entire podcast episode dedicated to exploring this. Quick reminder before we get into it to follow Autistic After Hours on Instagram. That's where I post polls every Monday so that you can vote for episode topics, and it's also where I post original content every week. Also, thank you to those of you who are watching me over on YouTube. As a reminder, you can always watch podcast episodes on YouTube at Ashra Louisa. There is an entire playlist dedicated to Autistic After Hours podcasts on there. I think to completely break it down, there are two main reasons for why I don't think I can ever live alone as an autistic person. And I also want to say that this doesn't mean I'm not independent. I am independent in many ways, but that is different from being able to completely live alone. So the first reason, and this is the one that's easier to talk about, is that physically I sometimes have a hard time keeping myself safe, and that is because of things that just come down to me having a disability. For example, this is something that has happened to me in the past, something that I've talked about before. I have a hard time keeping myself safe going on walks. Sometimes if I get really overstimulated on a walk, I've had times where I have almost walked into oncoming traffic because I can be forgetful of the things that I need to do to keep myself safe when I'm overstimulated. I might forget that I need to look both ways. I might look both ways, and because I'm so overstimulated, I don't see the car that's coming my way. I've gotten into car accidents because of this. I have a really hard time keeping myself safe when I'm overstimulated. It's easy for me to miss things. It's easy for me to forget things. And so this is something that would directly impact my ability to keep myself safe living alone. The chances of something dangerous happening in my environment and me missing it go up so much more with me being alone than with me having somebody else here to help keep things in order, to help keep me safe. I've had so many times where my boyfriend holds me back from crossing the road because I almost walk into oncoming traffic. I have had times where my boyfriend catches things that are in my environment that I didn't notice that would have led to me getting injured, to me being unsafe, to something bad happening because I was too overstimulated to realize that it was there. So it's little things like this that lead to me feeling really insecure in my ability to keep myself safe on my own. And this isn't a thing like I've become overly dependent on my boyfriend's support. This has always been a thing for me. I've always been called, quote unquote, an airhead. I've been told my head is in the clouds. I've been told that I don't have street smarts or that I struggle with common sense. And it's hard for me to concretely think of examples of how this has shown up in my real life, but these are just things that I've been called over the years, my entire life, because I sometimes miss the context for things. I sometimes misinterpret things like street signs. It's hard for me to directionally keep track of myself. Like, I have a really hard time getting from place to place because I have a really hard time following directions. I easily get overstimulated. I sometimes forget to do basic care things like making sure that I have had enough food, making sure that I have used the bathroom. It's things like this, just the obvious things that I deal with as a disabled person, as a disabled autistic person, that prevent me from feeling like I could ever live safely on my own. These are things that I say are obvious because these are often things that come with being disabled. There are life things that come with it that make it hard sometimes to keep track and keep yourself safe. And these aren't things that all autistic people deal with, and they are things that we may deal with to different severities from moment to moment in our life. Maybe in the past, if I were less stressed out in life, these things would be less impacting, or maybe in the future I may be more stressed out and these things may be more impacting. And for another autistic person, maybe these are not struggles that you have, maybe you have different struggles. But for me personally, there are certain things that come with being disabled that make it difficult for me to be safe. So things like being too overstimulated to keep track of my external environment, having difficulty with following directions. And this can be like following street signs. It could be like following my GPS. It can be like following directions that somebody gives me in any other context. It is just hard for me. Things like misinterpreting what someone said to me and then doing something incorrectly and then that leading to an unsafe situation, or having a difficult time with interpreting context and then I do something wrong and then that leads to me, again, being unsafe. It's just things that I can't concretely name, but if you've experienced it, you probably get what I mean. Like, there are just certain things that being autistic makes difficult. And because of those things, it can lead to unsafe situations. I guess throughout my life, it's always felt like most people have this sort of innate understanding of certain things, and I just don't have that. And that might mean with things like, again, like following certain directions or like common sense sort of things or like social things. It seems like there's these pre-written rules or like basis of understanding that many people have that I don't have. And because of that, there's more room for misunderstandings. There's more room for me to mess up. And that impacts over time my safety. And that can be for so many different reasons, but that is one of the reasons for why I think it would be difficult for me to ever safely be on my own permanently. Now, the next reason is partly because of being autistic, but also because of other mental health struggles I have. I deal with a lot of anxiety and also depressive episodes that I think could be related to PMDD, which I think stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder. I may be mistaken on the wording there, but PMDD, and I don't have that diagnosed, but I do think I may have it. I basically have some very intense depressive episodes depending on where I'm at in my cycle, and it's something I deal with every single month, and it's very, very difficult. And because of that, I don't feel secure in my mental state in order to be safely alone for extended periods of time. Throughout my entire life, this is something that I've dealt with. I've gone to therapists because of some really dark, intense thoughts, and I've feared for my life at times, feared for my own safety in my own hands. And because of that, it would be very difficult for me to be on my own and feel confident that nothing bad would happen from external things, like I was saying before, but also from internal things like my own mind. When I said in the beginning of this episode that there are two main reasons, those main reasons are really the external environment, but also my internal environment, and they both play into each other. When my mental state is really down and really dark, that can make my ability to keep myself safe externally difficult. And then again, when external things are getting really difficult, when I'm dealing with a lot of overstimulating things in my environment, that can push me into more of an anxious state, which can then trigger more depression. And so all of these things play into each other, and overall it just makes it really hard for me to feel safe in my solitude. And that is really difficult as an autistic person, because often being alone is the only thing that gives me solitude. And it's hard to know that being alone is so difficult for me because of my ability to keep myself safe, yet at the same time I do crave aloneness in order to calm myself down. So it's confusing and difficult. It's like I need to be alone in order to unmask fully sometimes, and I need to be alone in order to feel completely regulated. But at the same time, when I'm alone, I feel very, very dark sometimes, and I feel very scared of my own thoughts. So it's hard. It's hard to know that being around people is sometimes very dysregulating, but being alone is also mentally difficult, because when I'm alone, my thoughts really run, and sometimes they run somewhere bad. So it's kind of this feeling of never winning. It's like there's only like 1 or 2 weeks of the month where I'm not dealing with a lot of sadness, a lot of loneliness, and where I feel pretty good, but at the same time, even in those 1 or 2 weeks of the month where mentally I'm feeling pretty good, there's still all of the external things that make it difficult for me to regulate myself. There's still all of the external overstimulation that makes it difficult for me to keep my body safe. So overall, it's just better and more safe for me to have a person that's with me to help support me, and that is my boyfriend. And I also support him. I also help him in a lot of ways, but it's a different thing. The support that I give him is more so the typical average sort of support that people exchange with each other in a relationship, but the support that he gives me is more intense. Here's another example. A couple of nights ago, I had a meltdown, and if I were alone, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know how bad it would have gotten. I don't know if I would have been able to regulate myself, but because he was there, he helped me breathe, and he helped me get through the hyperventilation and re-regulate. And if I were alone, again, I don't know how much longer it would have lasted. I don't know how much of a strain it would have had on my body. I don't know mentally where I would be after it. But having him there to help me, it was the main reason why I was able to be safe in that moment. I guess the summary is that there are external things and also internal things that make it difficult for me to feel safe in being alone, which is hard because as an autistic person, I often want to be alone. Of course, the exception to this is my safe person, my boyfriend, who I want to be with most of the time. But in general, I think there are certain disabling factors that often come with being autistic that make it difficult for me to keep myself safe or for me to feel secure in my ability to keep myself safe. Things like missing certain things in my environment because of overstimulation, because of struggling with context, because of misunderstandings, because I feel like I don't have an innate understanding of certain things, like certain common sense things that many other people naturally have. So all of those things together lead to me feeling unsafe in many situations externally. But there's also the internal component of feeling like my emotional regulation is really difficult to handle on my own, feeling like my mental state goes from being okay to being really bad really fast, and it's hard for me to feel safe in that alone. And things like having meltdowns sometimes come with being autistic. Not all autistic people have meltdowns or shutdowns, but many do. I do have both meltdowns and shutdowns. And it is hard for me to navigate those safely on my own. And that is just a part of being autistic for me. And in the past, when I have been alone, it has led to very dangerous situations for me. And so having someone there to support me in that and make sure I am safe, even when I don't want to be or I can't be, it feels like a safety blanket. It feels like a reason why I feel secure. Without having that support, I would feel really insecure, and it would be difficult for me to say that I know I can keep myself safe because I don't know if I can, mentally, internally, and externally. So I hope this is helpful. A lot of this was really ambiguous and hard to talk about because, again, it's hard to concretely name what it is. Like, I can't say, it's this exact thing in my environment that would make me feel unsafe. I can't concretely say that because it's just like, it's things that I sometimes can't name, things that I sometimes don't understand. But like that idea of me being so overstimulated that I sometimes don't see a car coming and I almost walk into it. It's things like that. So I can't sit here and name all of them, but I can give you that example and say it's things like that that lead to me feeling unsafe or insecure in my ability to keep myself safe. And then it's things like my dark thoughts that lead to me feeling insecure in my ability to keep myself safe. And that emotional dysregulation, that is sometimes a part of being autistic. It can be a part of executive dysfunction. It also could be related to PMDD, which again, I haven't been diagnosed with, but I maybe have. It's all of that. And I wanted to make this episode today to help some of you who may be feeling similarly. And maybe you have other reasons why you feel unsafe, or maybe you don't relate to this at all. Again, we are all different and we're all valid. but these are the reasons why I would feel unsafe living alone permanently if I had to. And again, I know all of this was a little bit wishy-washy in the way I was talking about it, but it's the best I could do right now, and hopefully it was helpful. As always, remember, autistic adults exist. We deserve awareness, support, community, and acceptance, and I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye.